What's going on, guys and gals of YouTube? My name is OOTIKTAKOO and welcome back to the video that I promised to make you last week but never had time to get around to it. This is going to be the budget melee build. I just cleared 2 missions of tier 14 with it and got gold. It probably can carry you into tier 15, especially in the new meta of being one shot daily, but I can't guarantee you're going to get golds on every tier 15. However, a lot of people are running tier 14s anyway, so at least it holds up there. It actually performs a lot better than I originally assumed it would, and it's just an all in all pretty damn fun build. It really is. Melee builds in general are just a lot of fun. There are a few things that you can swap out here and there that we're going to talk about in the video, but we're going to try to make this quick and clean and pretend that all of the other bullshit that's going on right now isn't really going on. I'm just trying to cover the game for the people who will enjoy it, and this is something you may actually want to try out because honestly, it's a lot of fun, especially with the Vanquisher build just being destroyed as we just talked about previously. This is what I have been running on my stream. Not exactly this build, but a new modified melee build is what I'm using to play the game, and I'm having a lot of fun doing so. So with all of that out of the way, if you guys like guides, gear, and gameplay, think about subscribing. It really does help out the channel. And if you guys want to check me out, I stream 4 days a week over at twitch.tv/roundedtiktak. We would love to see you there. And with both of those things done, let's talk about the budget melee build. This build is kind of short and simple. Once we get to the armor, there's certain things that you may want to change here and there, and we'll discuss those when we get there. But first, as we do with all of these videos, let's talk about the weapons, or in this fact, weapon. I never changed my weapon in either mission. I only used this one, and luckily, it's exactly what we need. Our previous melee video broke down what melee actually does and what it scales off of, etc. All you guys need to know, if this is the first one you're watching, is melee scales off your anomaly power, and as a Devastator, it applies a bleed. That is really all you need to know. So let's talk about what weapon we are using. I happened to just find this in a vendor. I tried my best to not use any legendary gear. I know you see legendaries here, but there are no legendary mods on them. I tried my best to use no legendary gear, which we did. We didn't use any tier 3 mods, and I just happened to find this weapon in the vendor, and it was exactly what I was looking for, mainly resistance breaker. Side note, try to find resistance breaker on an LMG and then put death chains on it. That way, you're only taking pop shots in between your abilities and your melee attacks, and you don't have to reload every 2 seconds. That's what I would look for specifically if I had to do it again, but this is what was available to me. So we have a shotgun here with really good attributes for us, with weapon life leech, status power, and healing received. All of these things, especially in the meta of let's get one shot today, helps us stay alive. Our weapon heals us once we do take a couple of pot shots. The status power for our bleeds and the healing received in all forms really does help us out. What we have on the weapon is death chains, as it's just probably the best tier 2 mod for DPS in the game, and then resistance breaker, which targets their resistances and lowers them by 35%. Resistances really only work on bosses, as all of the small enemies don't really have much to take away. You can't really take 35% of only 5%. You know what I mean? So using this on bosses is very valuable for us. After we shoot them, death chains does more damage, our bleed does more damage, our melee attack and our abilities all do more damage. So if you happen to find something like an LMG with resistance breaker on it, definitely keep it in your inventory if you ever want to try this out, or if you're just farming CTs and trying to get better. Look for something like this. Now let's move on to the armor. As you guys can see, we do have some legendary gear here, but none of it has legendary mods on it. And a specific mod, this one, Seismic Impulse, we'll talk about it when we get there. So just know, although you see legendary gear, there are no legendary mods on them. It's just the best that I had available to me to be able to make this build. And it's not like I'm using tier 3 Seismic. These are Cannonball Pants. So I have no bonuses, no legendary gear, or no legendary mods, no tier 3 mods. It's just what I had. So the attributes or attributes or whatever you were going to make fun of me in the comments for saying it incorrectly anyway are anomaly power, status power, skills, life leech. In fact, I'd say these are the best to have except status power. I would really prefer anomaly power, cooldown reduction, skills, life leech. Considering our skills are what's keeping us alive, our melee attacks are considered skills, that is more important than an extra little bit of bleed damage from the status power. Once we get into the skill tree, you'll see we're not even spec'd into the majority of bleed damage nodes. So having status power is nice, but it's not necessary. Again, anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and skills life leech is probably what you're looking for the most. So on our helmet, we have exposing strike and blood shock. Blood shock, if you don't want to use earthquake in the build at all, feel free to change out this set and on our chest piece. But again, this is the best I had, and it's really not that bad considering you have to spec into the bottom tree for this build anyway. Having a few perks in earthquake is not a bad thing. Exposing strikes gives us vulnerability. Vulnerability gives us 15% more damage from all sources. What goes on here is, especially on beast maps, the little enemies crowd you around a broodmother or a boss, you kill them and you put vulnerable on the boss. That is what we have this in the build for. There is a tier 3 mod that allows all of our melee attacks to provide vulnerability, but since we're not using any tier 3 mods, we're using exposing strike instead. And then we have blood shock here with earthquake inflicts bleed on all damaged enemies. The main reason we have this is it provides a bleed because we do have bloody boost in the build, and it just gives a little more damage and survivability once you see the skill tree. After playing with this a little bit more, I changed out one mod, and we're going to talk about another one you might want to change out. We changed out the vulnerability on the punch on our helmet here for ground crush. I feel like the vulnerability is nice. It's a 15% damage increase, but it's not consistent enough specifically on human maps. If you're running beast maps, Archways of Enoch or Colosseum, I think the vulnerability wins there, but in this case, I think ground crush you might get a little more benefit from, so keep that in mind. Next, we have our chest piece. Again, Seismic Impulse and Earth Legacy. Seismic Impulse is a pretty damn decent mod. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I feel like we did around 8 to 9 million damage just with Seismic Impulse in the build. However, if I was to do it again, I would put another instance of Earthquake here. Earthquake did more damage than Seismic Impulse did with only one cast, so with 2, it would out DPS this. If you don't have a second Earthquake, which you should, then Seismic Impulse is a fantastic addition to the build. Or if you want to change something out, this is where I would change it out at, is the Seismic Impulse mod. Try it out. If you don't like it, it's fine. It just is free damage considering you're in the fray for the entirety of the mission. Next up, we have Legs of the Cannonball. You don't need this. I don't have anything better on hand. This has max health, close range damage, and the status power. However, something to take note is that the diffuse and move groove on these pants, specifically diffuse, has kept us alive a lot more than I thought was ever possible. While running these missions, I should have been one-shot a few times, and having 50%, actually it comes out to be 65% resistance, anomaly resistance, really does help us stay alive. And the extra 40,000 armor is quite nice to have too. If you wanted to change this out, you can go with a more DPS focused mod, but honestly, having some survivability in the build and still being able to gold at least challenge tier 14 is quite nice. Move groove, all we want out of it is the 10,000, 9,000 anomaly power, and the firepower doesn't do much for us. If you have a tier 3 mod like power assimilation or something like that, this is where I would add that into in this build. But for now, since it's all tier 2 mods, this is plenty for us. And then the second one here is diffuse. I can't think, or I can't find a non-tier 3 mod that I would replace with this. Since we're only using Earthquake as a damaging ability and buffing it with Golem and the Reflect Bullet ability, there's not really a way to get any more anomaly power in the build. There is this perk that increases our firepower, anomaly power, and armor, but I feel like the 7,000 anomaly power, which is all we're really looking for, isn't justified here. And being able to keep yourself up with 50% resistances is more beneficial. However, if you don't like diffuse and you want to try a different mod, this is where you would change it, I would think. Again, this build isn't 100% perfect, and you guys can do better by not using things like Leg of the Cannonball that has max health and close range damage on it. Things that are literally useless to us. It's just the best that I can do. Get better gear than I have and run these same mods, and you can almost probably do tier 15s. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. I don't know about golding them, but you'll definitely survive. And if you look around streams and you ask people, surviving is the name of the game at the moment, and a lot of people had to change their builds anyway. So if you find something that's better than this mod, feel free to use it, but at the moment, I feel like it's pretty good to have in the build. Next up, we have God Rolled Gloves here, which I was lucky enough to have dropped for me. This is what I use in the build that I run normally on stream. Anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and skills life leech. Brawl for more melee damage, and martial arts for a 50% cooldown reduction on our melee skill. If you're running any kind of semi-melee build, martial arts I don't think is needed. I'm not even 100% sure if it's needed in this build, but we have it. It's decent at least. And this is what we have on our gloves. I feel like if you're doing a melee build, you need brawl. Lastly, on our boots, anomaly, close range, and status power. We do have bloody boost on here. If you happen to have a pair of seismic legs, I would 100% use them in this build, and maybe include bloody boost as well. But if you do not have anything, then bloody boost is fine. Lastly, untamed power. This works with our melee attacks, our skills, everything. This is constantly proccing, and as you guys can see on the end game screen, it ends up being a lot of damage. So that is what we're using. All tier 2 mods, absolutely no tier 3s. We can clear tier 14s on golds, at least the 2 missions that I did for this video, and I honestly wasn't really playing that hard. And on top of that, since we apply vulnerability a decent amount, if you're playing with a teammate, you can help them out too, and you just do more damage. One last thing to note, if you happen to have the Seismic Commander's leg armor, maybe you have the leg armor and not the headpiece like everybody else in the game, use these leg pieces. If you really are lucky and you have Captain Hunter 2, these 2 mods will bring this tier 14 budget build into a tier 15 pretty damn decent build. All you need are these 2 mods, Captain Hunter and Tainted Blood. That's it. These 2 mods will make the build so much more powerful, so much faster on clear times. Just if you have it, use them. It's definitely better than what we have currently, but I didn't want to use any tier 3 mods for this build. Just quick note, if you have those, use them. So let's talk about the skill tree. We have Earthquake, Reflect Bullets, and Golem. These 3 abilities, even though they're 2 protective ones, the only reason we have them here is because we're not really spec'd into anything else that can do damage, and all of our other mods are melee or defensive based. So we have 2 defensive mods to proc Paladin. Paladin gives us 45% more anomaly power every time we use them. So that way we almost have it up twice as much because we cast Reflect Bullets and we get rid of it right away because you can cancel the cast. All we want from it is the extra anomaly power. Then up here, we take Strong Arm of the Anomaly. Every 10 seconds, do your best to remember to hit as many enemies as you can with your melee attack. Because once it does happen, even if it's just 1 enemy, you're only getting that bonus for 1 enemy for 10 seconds. I hope that makes sense. Then we come down here and we grab Strong Arm of the Law, which doubles our melee skill, which is perfect. Down here, the only reason we're taking this is for blood donation, because it adds to our survivability since our Earthquake and melee attacks both bleed enemies. Without this, you don't need it 100%, but it does help human-based maps where getting to the enemy as they're shooting you in the face is a little bit harder. Then we have Protected by the Anomaly here, which is a really good skill to have, which again allows us to run human maps a lot easier, so we have 40% more armor based off our anomaly power. Since we're spec completely into anomaly power, this adds up to a decent amount. Then lastly, we have Skilled Sentry, increase armor by 20% and resistance by 20% for 10 seconds whenever your skill ends. Since our Earthquake is on a 8-second cooldown, this is constantly up as long as you're using your skills. So just keep that in mind. This is very, very helpful, especially in the new I get one shot all the time meta. And then this we just grab for the extra seismic damage. That's it. That's the skill tree. Those are the skills. That's the build. Here's your template. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. TikTak out.